I just want to show you what the screen looks like. Can you see stuff on your screen?
I can see you and I can see myself and I can see a bit on the no, something is happening. 39% uploading.
I'll show you what the host screen looks like.
Okay. By the way, I will be naughty and I'll drink beer.
Okay, I actually thought if I should get a beer, but I haven't been reacting well to alcohol nowadays.
You kind of gave up, right? You just drink occasionally.
Yeah.
I had 3 weeks when I was in Delhi. Now I can see the screen. Yeah,
So here's the screen basically. I think there's a bit of a mirror effect going on, but
that's okay.
this right side is where, so you are basically shown as a guest for now.
Yeah,
We'll see.
because you are the host, right? Because I actually logged in middle of the day. Just I thought I may need a user ID, etc. So I created it, and then it gave you an option of producer or a host.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I went for the cheap free option.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't sign up for the trial either.
Yeah,
So
okay.
my idea is if this somehow if this leads to an output that we like,
Then it's worth making. Absolutely.
be worth. There's also the option to basically live stream this. So
So you
right,
can have a live less live.
yeah, yeah. So we are not live streaming this right now, but we can
Good.
actually live stream.
Yeah, we have to. We will have to edit it. You know what we should? What we should do? We should go crazy and publish it and see what the hell happens
Yeah, we could.
after
I mean,
editing.
I
After
was
editing.
actually doing this from a very like a very experimental standpoint, like what you can
It is
see.
experimental. You know, in the serials,
So this is my work
that's okay.
in my bedroom.
That's okay. But actually, when you sit in the middle, nothing is visible other than your
Yeah,
gamer's chair, or
yeah.
it looks like a
It's not
gamer's chair.
it's a very cheap thing that a cheap Chinese chair I got
And
of
we'll claim it. You will claim it the most expensive gamer's chair in the world. But no, for me, it's like you're. I loved your idea because when we talk for such a long time. It's like, what harm can happen, right? We'll have a good conversation, we'll
yeah,
record it, and nothing happens, nothing happens. Nobody was expecting it anyway.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's like so many. I think I need to watch a couple of YouTube videos on how to basically wrangle this. But you
Hmm.
get the idea, right? It's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like
yeah.
recording studio setup,
Hmm.
which is pretty cool because I get to, so I have a decent, it's like a full HD webcam that I have.
Let me go at a slight angle because my light. So this is what I did was I turned one of my bedroom in this apartment into a study. So
Very
that's
cool.
the bookshelf, but there's a bookshelf in front as well. So the light went on the left hand side a little bit. I think if this is would be better, I think, right? Because you
Yeah.
get the
So what
full.
I do is I don't know if, I mean, I might have to show my webcam.
You're fully visible. Okay.
My,
Oh
so
yeah,
what I
you're
do
going
is
light
I
on
have
the
a
side.
small
Yeah,
lamp. Yeah.
yeah. So I have this thing, but I need to find the connector.
Yeah.
It's somewhere. So
And
if I light it up,
I have a smart light in the bedroom that I basically set to blue most of the time.
okay.
Uh, Unless, I mean, even if it's daytime, usually I don't even switch it on. I work out of here and and then I switch on the lamp and that's enough work.
I actually hardly sit in this room. I sit on the sofa and do all my work with the TV
Oh no,
switched
that
on. Oh,
is with your posture a lot because
I know. But actually, to be honest, saying that, I don't sit on my laptop for that long. So
Mm,
I'll give you before we start recording, etc. My routine nowadays when I'm in Calcutta is in the morning. So in my society, the club has got two squash courts. So I play squash on my own. So it's like running around. I'm sweating like pig. So and that's to stay fit. And in the evening, I go to the gym around 4 o'clock. There's a gym, straight simple gym, but there's gym, the weights and everything. So I actually sit in between those two times, but only when I need to. I'm not non-stop on the laptop. If I have to sit non-stop, then I'll come here and sit down because the chair is proper chair. I can sit down properly. But if I have to write draft one or two emails here and there, or just look at some websites, I do it from there.
so yeah, this is Riverside basically. But yeah,
It's
it looks
pretty cool. When I logged in today, I thought, what has technology done? It has made life so much easier. Can you imagine the first set of podcast guys who had none of this shit?
yeah.
What
So
they had to do?
so they had to basically record. I mean, it was anyway. So podcasts, by the way, also a Steve Jobs thing.
Is
Um,
it still toxic? I didn't know.
yeah, yeah.
Ah,
Podcast. So podcast, the word comes from it's related to the iPod.
makes sense.
Yeah. So basically, this guy had this brilliant idea that
iPod and bros.
so his vision at that point was let's take down radio altogether. Let's just kill or let's compete with radio altogether because radio in the US was a mega market. And
Right.
at the time the iPod came out, there was already this sort of digital transformation of radio that had happened, which created Sirius XM and all of these digital radio
Hmm.
channels, satellite radio channels, right? And his whole thought process was to bring media onto the iPod and into basically into the Apple world,
Ecosystem.
go and crack media deals with these. And when he started to crack media deals with the Sonys and Paramounts and all of these guys, he got to know that like how the radio business operated, right? And when he figured that out, he said, let's basically start taking a crack at this. And so his podcast, the original podcast, the way it was structured was you would basically make a monologue or kind of you would make a show, basically a radio show that lasted for X number of minutes, and
Uh,
then you would self-host it and do you remember the RSS days? So the link used to sit somewhere, the content used to sit somewhere, and then you would have an RSS link that would basically be spread across the internet.
right.
And iPod basically was given the capability to pick that RSS link and show it on or download it onto and store it on the iPod. And you could listen to a podcast wherever you went. That was the original very broken way. And now you have like basically after Spotify and YouTube came on to the scene, it's all changed completely. Now you can literally live stream and that's how basically radio I think has died a very I wouldn't say it died. It's still quite prevalent. In terms of it has its own market now, right?
It depends on which radio station you listen to, right? So, for example, I listen to a lot of BBC, and I listen to it when I'm doing other stuff. For me, the BBC Radio 4, for example, is a fascinating service where, see, when you have an interesting documentary in TV, you have to be stuck in one place looking at it. The radio, if you switched on, and I have learned so many stuff in the world listening to BBC Radio 4 programs.
I mean, BBC Radio was the OG of radios. They basically taught people how to program over
And they still do really good programs. And I think in a
stuff.
weird way, I was never a big fan of license fee driven, although by the way, BBC World is not license fee driven, it's completely commercial. But overall, the BBC radio, or rather the business model is that actually it's effectively funded by the public, right? The British, whoever, and then they might be selling it to the BBC World, etc., and making money out of it. And I think it's a good, especially when I compare it to the Indian TV ecosystem, the channels, etc., and compare it to BBC's various things. I think it's a good evidence of having such support system based on be it a license fee, subsidy, whatever you call it, which takes you away from the commercial pressure and allows you to do things otherwise there'll be no demand. But there is a demand. It may not be profitable, but it's actually, if you think about the way I look at it, it is if you think at the broader agenda of any media house, it's not just to go for the popular stuff, but also push the envelope a little bit. That's the only way to do it. So you will do stuff about, I don't know, sad things, exciting things, esoteric things, which otherwise will not get funded. And I say it this way because the other day I was watching, actually, I think Doordarshan does better programming nowadays. I watch through YouTube than all the commercial ones. But they also do a lot of partnership with DWs, the Deutsche Welle and others, right? What are they showing? The weird thing is, Deutsche Welle is producing programs on India which are so esoteric.
Mm,
From an Indian perspective, no Indian channel is covering it. And then
yeah,
just being shown on Doordarshan.
yeah. That's so surreal, right? I mean, DW, there are a few of the state-run actors that are TV channels that are really good. Beep, obviously one of them. NPR, by the way,
NPR is very good. Yeah,
fantastic
absolutely.
stuff. DW again, to an extent, although I would argue how biased, unbiased they are, Al Jazeera.
No, Al Jazeera is very good. I used to watch it a lot because
Yeah, I
Al
used to watch Al
Jazeera,
Jazeera a lot as well. Yeah.
and in fact, Al Jazeera sometimes goes to places where BBC doesn't dare to go,
Mm,
or a DW doesn't dare to go. No wonder they get bombed also sometimes, right? Because they make people feel uncomfortable or whatever it is, political things.
mm,
But
mm,
maybe we're diverting a little bit. This is where I think I was actually watching a program. I can't remember what it is, but one of the things I've been thinking a lot recently is this whole idea of we want to become an advanced country, India. Now, is anybody asking the question, what are the broad parameters which we have to hit to become an advanced economy, advanced country, right? So I'll give you my two or three very selfish reasoning behind the parameters you need to aim for, you will have to aim for to claim that you are advanced and or developed. Can I walk in the road without worrying about getting hit by a motorcycle? Can I drink water off the tap? Can I breathe without buying a machine, good quality air? Is because you see, it's not all about money. You can sell off all the elements of other life by increasing your per capita income. But does it make you advanced? The other element is also about what are the diversity of opinions and interests and subjects that are available in the ecosystem of your media and everything, right? I think all of this. So you have an NPR in US, even when Trump is there or whoever it is there, and they will do their own product, own programming. So for me, it's very important when to actually think about these things because I genuinely think I was watching a program earlier on YouTube, a discussion about, the Piyush Goyal, the Commerce Secretary, Minister said India is only doing all these quick delivery services. He's right, but there's also valid argument why it is happening or why it is harder to do the other deep tech and all the other things. But I think that's a question worth having. So anyway, I'm diverting completely, but I think those are some fundamental things, right? For me, someone who was from this country, went out, kind of started looking outside in, then back in. To become advanced, to become developed, it's not just about your per capita income. Because here's the way to look at it. And maybe the answer, maybe the question I'm going to ask, the answer may be in the middle. Hopefully, you can edit it out. It does increase in per capita income automatically ensure all the other things happening, like a good traffic system, a good pedestrian system, a diverse media, or do you have to put an extra, not extra, but do you have to also focus on those things as well? And create that environment where all of those things happen. Because here's the question, here's the argument I will have. There are a lot of countries which are much poorer than India, which have cleaner roads. There's a lot of country across the world which are less advanced than India technologically, but they actually have a better traffic system. They have the average person doesn't break the traffic signal as much, so they could reach there without reaching that advanced economic measure. So my hypothesis would be it's not that if you hit your whatever your economic metrics is, per capita income, GDP, whatever it is, that's not a necessary condition to have the other one. So you could target both at the same time. And my question is this country targeting both at the same time? I don't see it as much.
Few points here to your hypothesis, a few observations rather. Your definition of development is your definition, right? It's basically Ari's definition. And what I mean by that is, if you look at, I mean, the best two examples I can think of are Singapore and China.
Mhm.
Horrible on the press freedom index, right?
Absolutely.
Their national programming, I hadn't watched much of it, but I think it would be probably, they don't have great press freedom.
Yeah. Yes.
So connecting, so what I mean by the, like you get what I'm trying to say, right? So Ari's definition subsumes or assumes that in order to have a developed economy, you would also need to have diversity of opinion. That's not
Absolutely.
necessary. That's a European concept.
But I'll
This
tell
is
you
one.
another. No, but my counter argument with this, right? So I've thought about it. I had some discussion about it, right? Without diversity of thinking, neurodiversity of a society,
Mm, mm.
you will never have a good. Tell me one Singaporean product that is globally known. You can't name one.
Yeah, that's the thing though.
It's a homogeneous thought process.
I know
You and
it's
I.
homogeneous thought process. But if you look at, for example, just to take that point further, so essentially what you're saying is, or your hypothesis now that a homogeneous society is unlikely to bring up innovative products, and that's again, I would counter argue that and say that there's homogeneous societies like Sweden, Norway, who've built fantastic products, right?
No,
They are
no, but I'll correct you one. No, so
at what
I'll qualify one thing. When I say homogeneous, I don't mean it by culture. I don't mean it by uh, ethnicity. What I mean by is thoughts. In Sweden, you can challenge the government. You can challenge the biggest power and you'll be absolutely safe. In Singapore, you challenge the dominating party. It's an autocratic democracy, let's be honest, right?
yeah,
You will not be able to survive. What I mean is the structure where diversity is allowed to not only express itself but flourishes. And kind of, let me go now into the capitalism side of it. It's almost like capitalistic world where with so many ideas and opinions floating around, the market kind of determines what is right, what is the most popular one, right?
so let me draw a graph. This is my view on the thing. It's a nuanced take because I don't look at it as a black and white thing. I think in order to be innovative, there needs to be difference of opinion. But
Absolutely.
also it's important to disagree and move or disagree and commit, as is
That's
this
correct. That's correct.
very famous statement in startups. Singapore, to answer your earlier question, has some fantastic products. If you consider Singapore Airlines a product, or Changi Airport a product, or Singapore's overall tourism market itself a product, I mean, I can come up with so many others. Singapore's transport system, rapid transport system itself as a product. And they have built some fantastic stuff.
But what is the but so again, I have
Yeah,
nothing against Singapore. Actually, I've never been to no, I've only been to Singapore on the way changing my flight.
yeah. So
But I
they
know it's a very efficient
come up
society.
with other products, right? Like their hawker system, the street food stalls, right? Are some of the best. Some are actually Michelin starred. So it's like
No,
Singapore is a different society
so
altogether.
no, so what I mean is like let me look qualify me myself a little bit more what I said by product. To narrow down to make the point I'm trying to make. I understand. And when you broaden the definition of product, Changi Airport may be a product, can be a product which is extremely efficient. Their transport system can be a product which is extremely efficient. Their hawker system may be a product which is extremely high quality. But don't you see there's a necessary criteria in all of those things? It's called discipline. Someone to enforce something.
Yeah, yeah,
Now,
yeah,
if you move away from someone where discipline and that kind of efficiency is not the necessary condition. I'm talking about a product which is a consumer product where anybody in the world could be using it. There's no Microsoft that came out of Singapore, but it attracts all the best heads. It's a tax-free place. Everybody in the world. It's not like it's a closed-off society, right? The immigration is not a problem. From that angle, if you see, they have not been able to do it as yet. And my theory would be it will struggle because to come out with that kind of a product, what you need is you need to create a condition where multiple opinions has to have equal weightage in the table, irrespective of who it is who's expressing it. I think the reason America is why it is and what it is because it this egalitarian way of operating where it doesn't matter whether we're illegal, Harvard or Yale or XYZ. Culturally, it's in a way where if you say something which is um, a winning argument, who you are and where you're from doesn't matter. It wins it, it attracts the capital, it attracts the effort, it attracts the talents, and you can make something out of it. India has the same problem actually, but for a different reason, I think. But we'll go to it later. In terms of why India has zero products globally now.
yeah. I mean, that's something I will not devil's advocate on. So I'll agree on the American part, which is, I mean, it's, by the way, one other great example of disagree and build extremely innovative stuff is Israel. There's this
Absolutely.
book I read called The Startup Nation or something, if I remember correctly, it's called.
For the for the population size or the economy size, the number of fantastic new ventures and companies that comes up, and a lot of it people don't even know
And it's in deep
because
tech, right? So exactly, it's
yes,
not consumer. It's like in defense,
yeah,
it's agri-tech, it's
we
satellite
we
technology.
generally is much harder to crack, right? A lot
Yeah,
of it becomes B2.
it's a mix and it's a mix of two things. So it's a mix of that. So I mean, this book is fantastic. I highly recommend it. So I got it recommended by, you remember, Ken Olisa, the
Yeah, yeah,
guy.
Ken Olisa, the chairman of your company used to work for.
I picked it up from his library. So I saw it one day and he's like, you need to read this book. So I picked it up from there. It's fantastic reading. I couldn't put it down. So it's like a fantastic mix of two things. One is the highly regimented disciplinarian thinking that a country that's permanently at war needs, right?
Yeah,
And everyone has
existential crisis. Psychologically, it is an existential crisis.
hardcore survival military mindset. That's all like military theory, regimentation, discipline, everything. And the second one is the Jewish questioning mindset. So as a child, when you're taught the Torah, the rabbi tells you to question everything. And so both of these put together lead to a very potent kind
Absolutely.
of innovation civilization.
So now I will segue to what I kind of try to avoid lack of products out of India, which are globally well established. And I will go straight to technology side of things, right? Because everybody claiming India is this IT tech power. I was just watching on YouTube the print, not discussion, a narrative. And this is on the back of Piyush Goyal saying Indian startups are busy doing quick delivery, while Chinese ones are busy doing deep tech. And she was saying both of them are right, blah, blah, all the various nuances. And then she touched upon a point, and it goes, how can you have creative products which require creative mind when your education system discourages it from right from the beginning? A schooling system where if you ask a teacher a question which is against and which a system which effectively encourages you to memorize and you are asking a question, you'll be shut down and then you will be penalized for having asked that question. What have you done? You've just killed the level of curiosity part of that person, and over time, it will go down. Anyway, so there's this guy, I can't remember this guy's name, the Scottish guy who's a teacher, and he says the biggest killer of creativity in human being is the education system everywhere.
Oh yeah,
If you give
today
a child,
the education system in India somehow ended up becoming this really, I don't know how to even put it, twisted is the only word I can think of. Because if you trace it through history, or at least the way people talk about it, uh, the old Gurukul system was based on a Socratic system. It was not this stupid, take an exam, there's a million people writing this exam and only 10,000 people pass and this bullshit, right? It wasn't like that. At least in the way that they write it in the scriptures or what I am told when I talk to spiritual gurus or all these guys. They say at a point in time it was like you used to literally go live at the guy's house. It was
live the
not
life and learn
meditation
from him.
or whatever. Yeah. Stay for 15, 16 years, learn everything you need to learn, ask him questions, live with your with your whatever teammates, your colleagues, whatever, grow up in the same spot, eating the same stuff, and then come out and go join your family profession, right? So if your dad was a weaver, go join your dad who was a weaver, right? And so on and so forth. And it somehow, I'm sure Victorian era England had something to do with the current twisting, but
Yes.
even after 50 years or 70 years of independence, if we haven't moved the needle on.
But so Victorian era, I think Victorian viewpoint and Victorian values and Victorian approach. I think there's a lot of things which went worse in India because of the Victorian effect. But again, I'm not an expert, but I'll say if is it really education one of the effects? Because if you look at Britain, the mothership of Victorian values or Victorian thought process. I can give many other areas where the Victorian view actually narrowed down the traditional original Indian way of looking at things. But education isn't really the case because if you look at their innovation, you study most of the innovation that came out of Britain. A lot of them, and it was true for every other country. every other innovators from any other country. The original innovation always came out of guys who were as a profession at something. And I'm talking about basic science at this point. As one profession where he earned his living, and another thing was a hobby. And then there's deep study in physics and chemistry and everything, right?
Oh yeah.
That didn't prevent. Even to this day, I keep repeating it. In my masters, the guy who was the best was German guy who had no formal bachelor's degree. Because even now, at least when I did it, I'm sure it's still the same. For a master's application, it will say bachelor's or equivalent. And equivalent is based on what you produce. It could be your own hobby, and the admission council decides it's good enough, it's equivalent, or it could be an experience. So in this particular guy's case, he through the German system, whatever he had the schooling. After that, he went off and did apprenticeship or whatever he did. But he was actually the most experienced, although he had no formal degree. Could not produce you a BSc or a BTech. And he was very humble. He said, "Oh, I'm the least competent." And I remember the professor, Chess, he said, "No, you may not have the degree, but you have the most experience. That's what counts." And that mindset in India is completely non-existent because in India we have taken the codification right. So I put this view. There were never any profession, right? So if you go back to the scientists of the origin who came with the basic stuff, someone was a cobbler who used to look at the stars and became an astronomer, right? Nobody certified him as an astronomer.
Mm.
Over time, these things get codified and a barrier is put around.
Yeah.
That you have to do BSc astronomy, only then you can get this job, right? That guy would never have cracked it.
Yeah.
Now, when it in India, it has gone extreme, where everything is codified and codification is the necessary criteria, even when the actual criteria should be the creativity of your thought process, the uniqueness of your way of looking. And that's why we have things which I think in India are not sometimes, and I'm being very critical now. It's not that everything is bad, but I'm focusing on the bad. Most things I pick up in India, which are cheap, you push it to hard breaks. The quality is bad. There's a reason why China dominates everything. Things don't align. You take an assembly thing, and then you see there's a big gap in between. You somehow push it. So I think, and that's part of the reason would be the codification has gone too far, and codification has become such a necessary criteria. You have forgotten the end objective. So a guy without a lead machine, let's say someone has run around a lead machine. There's a certification for lead machine. In India, what it has become is, do you have a certificate in lead machine? You have got the job. Or you can only apply if you've got a lead machine certificate. So out of 5,000, they pick up the best one. There's one silly guy, one unfortunate guy who did not have the money to actually get the certification, but he had been using the lead machine since he was born. He is the master lead machine operator. He can't even go there to be considered.
Mm.
And what you then have is compromised quality. And that guy will be more creative because he knows it inside out.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very, very valid point. I cannot disagree with that. I think the core, I think it's gonna get broken down going forward
It
because
has to be broken down if this country has to improve because the way the current approach, and it has to go to the education system actually. The education system, I know it has changed a lot since I left. I'm not fully conversant with it, but I know it's a lot more flexible now compared to when I was studying. You have to allow people to interpret their own way. You give me an Akbar, I should be able to interpret Akbar my own way. And you cannot say it's wrong. You can only give your opinion. You can add more points. When I was in UK doing my masters, I had a cousin. She was much younger than me. She was still doing her PL level, and she was doing it. So one day I went with my uncle to pick her up from the school. So I was asking what her exam questions are, etc. They are encouraged to. So their question will be like this: Imagine you are Hitler, and these are the scenario. What would you do in that situation? That's one way of learning history. The other way is the traditional, what used to be the Indian way. I don't know what it is nowadays. It's a rote learning of remembering the years and who was the king and who was the queen. Why did they kill someone? Why did they move the capital? Would you move the capital? What could you have done if you wanted to move the capital in a much more efficient way? None of those. So no wonder
yeah,
there's no critical thinking. No
yeah,
wonder, having gone through this system, there's no one who's willing to take the risk, or there's not a system which allows you to take the risk to come up with a product. Because product is innovation. In innovation, you can only innovate if you're willing to fail. but failure cannot be the end of your life. I remember, and I'll hand it over to you. The very first, when I joined HP Labs, my first proper job, at that time there was a lot of controversy going on because Carly Fiorina just became the CEO and she was a marketing woman. And until then, and she started dominating HP Labs, changed a lot of rules. And I remember the second month of me joining, the director of HP Labs Bristol was going to had resigned. He was leaving, and he was a famous scientist. And he said in the speech, so there was a leaving thing, and it was not a speech as in like the whole campus went there, and he was speaking, and he said, when you start trying to select winners in a research lab, you know the trajectory is downwards, because if it's so they're all scientists, they talk a bit like a scientist, like it's like a bell curve. The more failure you have in your research, you are much closer to the winner. And then he gives example one after another. So calculator was invented, for example, in HP Labs. And he said it never started as a calculator project. It's a serendipity part of it. You may start as a project and you come out something, but if you want to pre-select, this is the product I will give you, or this is the service I'll give you, and you start as that, the chances, likelihood is neither will you get that, and you have killed the 15 other options that came for funding, but three of them are winners.
Right. So basically, it gets down to, I mean, even in sales, right? It's not just in innovation. It's just the process of clearly knowing what you don't want, and it's like a process of elimination, because you could have a fantastic product that you could sell to 2,000 people, but then it would be a process of going through the remaining whatever 198,000 other guys
Who
who
doesn't
would
want?
not. So it is a process of elimination,
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
surprising how many people don't look at it that way.
And actually, the funny thing is, the
Life
now,
is like a process of clearly defining what you don't want, or like what you will
absolutely,
not, in order to
absolutely,
focus clearly on what you truly want.
absolutely. And the funny thing is, just to expand on the point you made, because you kind of really got the point I was trying to make. So I heard that speech of him long time back. I was immature, didn't appreciate what he said. The more I look back, every time I think about that statement, the more I appreciate, because if you think about it, if you don't try, if you don't want to fail, there's only one guaranteed way you won't fail, you don't try.
Hmm.
But then how do you succeed? Because then it may say whatever you will do, you will have a prior guarantee that you will succeed. But if there's a prior guarantee that will succeed, you will not be the first one. Someone else has already done it.
Oh yeah,
Otherwise, you'll not get the guarantee, right?
I was about to say that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, in that case, it's not an innovation anyways.
So even in personal life, so my career, right? It's a bit chaotic. In my view, it's not chaotic. If you don't try many things, how do you know you have found the thing that you really want to do or enjoy? Now, a lot of people may try a lot of things, and in their entire life they can't find it. Or there's another small subset where these are the tail end of the bell curve, right? That the very first one is the one they're passionate about it, they get it. But the vast majority is in the middle. Unless you go through that whole rigmarole of trying and failing, and as a result, going through the journey of finding out. And I think that is where, irrespective of culture, people are very wary of failing or losing or taking risk, would be the way I would say it. And as a result, I don't have any statistics or data, but I'm sure if we dig it and find out, majority of the workers are unhappy because they're in a job they don't enjoy, but then neither are they willing to actually take the risk and try to do something which they might find it interesting, but then there's a risk inherently involved in it.
Yeah, but there's also the question of feeding yourself, right? Feeding your family, and then finding and chasing the money, so to speak. Basically,
Absolutely.
going with the program.
And that is the real world, right? So then what, in an ideal utopian world, no, not everyone's problem will be solved. In an utopian world, where context is utopian, not the outcomes. At least people would say, will be honest to say, I'm not doing it because I've got a family to look after. This is a risk I cannot take because it will put other people at risk, or whatever that argument is, right? But at least you'll be clear in your mind why you are not doing something that you really want to do, but you cannot because the circumstances don't allow. I do know people, and there's a lot of people who actually are very clear about exactly that position, that they cannot pursue certain things because of the circumstances they're in. But there's a lot of other people also who would complain and be unhappy, but not accept the reality that actually their circumstances don't allow them to take the risk. And if they accepted it, they'll be a little bit more happy because they don't have this contradiction in their mind that I want this, but I can't do that. Then they will come to this realization as of now, my circumstances don't allow me to pursue what I want to do, although that is my passion, because I have got another contradictory set of priorities which takes precedence as of this point, which will be the family or job or whatever it is. So as a result, as of now, I have to give up on this for a bit to make sure I fulfill this part of it. But I think it's not people's fault. I think it's because people just don't reflect on their own self enough.
Yeah, because you will find eventually, if you do reflect on it, that one of two things, right? Either you figure out or convince yourself that you do like what you're doing, which is actually like a roundabout way of saying that, well, I'm feeding my family and I'm actually extremely grateful to have this
Mhm.
in where I am actually able to feed my family. My passion comes second. This is one case that you talked about. The second one is they might find that it really is not worth it. Like they don't even really care about their passion outweighs their necessity to or their duty to feed the family so much that they would much rather go and crack at it. And
Mhm.
then that's just a risk that a person has to take. I think, yeah, bottom line is, yeah, reflecting on the self, and then this segues into a totally other direction. Bottom line is, if you do that self-reflection as a person, you're already quite mature in that, like quite elevated or evolved in that sense, because you're anyway operating from. I just did a LinkedIn post on this morning, which is like, are you operating from inside out or from outside in? Is it like, are you doing stuff because something is shiny and it's like super, I mean, it's paying very well or whatever it is, and your skill sets align there, or you want to get the skill sets to do that? That's one. Or the second thing is, are you doing something because internally something is telling you that you need
Mhm.
to do that? So if both align, I mean, happy camper, right?
Perfect. Perfect. Absolutely.
Nothing better than that. But I think for a lot of people, it wouldn't align. Like I can give the example of my own wife, right? She loved math as a kid, and then her entire family tried to get her to be a doctor because there were no doctors in the family. So they were like, "We'll pay your fees even if you don't crack the exam, we'll get."
We just need a doctor on the tap.
And then she was like, "No, I hate this shit. I'll go do my math and I'll study to be an engineer." And she was very clear she didn't want to do all the IIT jumping through the hoop stuff. So she's like, I'll study what I'll study. And then she knew that she wouldn't get into it.
She's one of the lucky ones because I'll tell you,
Self-realized from a very early stage, and
yeah,
she wanted to do the math, and then she wanted to do her analytics, and there is like very little cognitive dissonance in her approach to her career. It's like she does. In my case, it's the exact opposite, right? I don't know. Like if you put three or four options on a table for me, what role I should pick, I'll be super confused. I'll have to go back and like think
she's
and
very
come.
clear in her head what it is that
So
is
there
for.
goes my point about knowing or not knowing what you want to do really gives you that focus, and then you can just go ahead and just keep really like the Shokunin concept. Have you heard of this? There's this
No,
person, there's this
Shakuni.
Shokunin. So there's this idea in
Okay,
Japan of being a cobbler, but being the best damn cobbler on the planet. Like do
it's
your
called
one.
pride in your profession.
Yeah, I mean, not just pride. So so the elevating it to a Zen level where you're just literally like a monk who just does that one thing. So this movie called Jiro Dreams of Sushi. I highly recommend it.
Oh, that's Netflix, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was
It's
on
on.
Netflix.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I mean,
think you mentioned it to me. I
yeah,
think I
yeah.
watched part, maybe not whole. I think I watched part
It's
of it.
extremely boring. It's extremely boring. But for me, I mean, I literally sat through the entire movie just marveling at who is this guy, man? He goes like 2 o'clock in the morning, goes and picks up a fish because he and he's elevated it to such a level that the fishmonger will not sell any other guy the best catch that the fishmonger gets. He wants Jiro to make a sushi out of it. So he'll keep it.
He'll not sell it to anyone else but to him.
He'll not sell it to anyone else. And that is the whole concept of the shokunin. That's actually why you end up finding the best damn omelet, the best damn shoe, the best damn jeans. Anything you want to find, the best that's in Japan actually.
So,
Because
so,
there's a
so,
guy
so
who decided to be the jeans maker, or because his dad was a jeans maker, no one cares. He doesn't really care. Either he has decided or the decision has been made for him.
they can always
But he's going to make jeans for 45 years.
I'll relate it back to Indian context, right? And it touches on another point. We touched about the creativity and all this stuff, right? This is the unfortunate reality of lot of, again, I don't know about 18-year-old and 15-year-olds right now in India, but when I was growing up, the reality was your parents pre-decided what they want you to be, whether you have the capability to do that or not. And let's be honest, there are two things, engineers or doctors. Now, can you imagine the guy who doesn't want to be an engineer and becomes an engineer out of pressure? He's never ever going to build the Eiffel Tower. No way, right? But when a zero passionate about his food, he influences other people in a way. His fishmonger doesn't sell the fish to anyone else because he knows zero is the guy who will make the best out of that produce he has product he has got, right?
Yeah.
So your
It's
ecosystem.
Giro's case is, I mean, just to stay on that example for a little while, it's so out of the park. It's so wild that the movie's title is Jiro Dreams of Sushi because the guy literally gets sushi ideas in his dreams. So he's like, oh, I need to
But
do
can,
this with,
but can you imagine how deep in his being is that
yeah,
sushi?
it's subconscious.
That's passion on steroids multiple times, right?
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
who is going to produce a better sushi, Hero or the guy, Hero who became a sushi chef only because his father used to be a sushi chef and he forced him to become one?
So just to stay on that example a little more. So in the movie, Jiro has two sons, and both of them are beside themselves that they can never reach his level. So Jiro was not a sushi maker, mind you. So Jiro's dad was a cobbler or some other profession, and then this guy, something happens, and this guy gets into making sushi, and basically is in poverty, like most of Japan was,
Struggling,
and
yeah.
becomes a shokunin at it. And then his kids get into it because his dad is now established and a Michelin star guy. So his kids also get into, I mean, not big, Michelin star came later, but he was very famous as a sushi master. So his kids also get into it because it's very lucrative at this point. And both of them, their major pain in life is that they're Jiro's sons and they can never get to his level, right?
That is another problem of a child of a very successful person, right? If you then define your being as I have to be as equal as him, your father had his own passion,
Yeah.
his father had his own skills, but
So it's
I
not
do understand the point.
simple, right? So it's not like someone can define the path for you and then you can take it
Absolutely,
forward. Like,
absolutely.
actually,
You have to find your own path.
yeah, it has to be self-driven. Like, it has to be inside out in some deep way. It's like,
Absolutely.
Nico is like that lucky guy who basically somehow figured out that he needed to make sushi.
And actually, on that one, I think the other thing to say, which I think is important, is nobody can give a timeline to how when people find out what their that owns a passion, what their life journey is supposed to be. Because one, it can change. Number two, it can come at various stages in life, right? Because certain things are dependent on experience. And so I think the other problem in certain societies are it forces you to take a decision too early, and because it won't be the same time for everyone. So someone may know when they're 14 what they want to be. The other guy may actually find their calling when they're 41. And I
Yeah,
think and a good supporting society should have a structure where both of them will have the wherewithal to pursue whatever they want to do. Whether it's possible or not is a different story, but it should have it. But if you look at a lot of systems, the oldest guy in my master's was 74 years old.
oh wow,
He was part of the Olivetti team which discovered or invented, whatever the word we use, electronic typewriters, an Italian guy.
wow.
Now you tell me, now I know India, tell me which Indian university will allow you to do masters at age 74?
Yeah, a bit tough. Actually,
Zero.
slight detour there. My granddad, my mother's father, I think he was in his late 80s, early 90s when he died, succumbed to COVID. He got his PhD in Telugu literature at that age. So he had just finished his PhD. So there are universities, but for masters, I'm not sure.
Generally, I'm sure in India will be exception, but actually in UK system, again, it goes back to the equivalent thing, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't give this criteria of this so many it has this broad. So I was listening. So again,
Problem
completely.
for masters, you again have to go through these hoops where you have to take an exam. Like you want to get an MBA when you're like 70 years old, you have to take ISET or
Oh,
something.
that's the whole thing, right? No, you in UK, you don't have to sit for an exam to do the masters. You produce everything. You have to write an essay. Because not because the exam score is never a good indicator. Because what if the month you took all the exams, you were really
Yeah,
unwell? There's
yeah, yeah.
no medical report that goes along with it, right?
That happened to me. I was shat during my chemistry exam, IIT. So my exam went really badly. So
I'll
I
give you
was
the other example. My
bad headache,
in my plus
super
12,
stressed out.
in my plus 12, my I studied science, physics,
Mm,
chemistry, usual stuff.
mm,
If you look at my mark sheets, you will think I'm very good in chemistry.
mm.
I was really bad. My answer to everything was unfulfilled d orbital.
Oh, oh,
And I ended up getting the best marks. I didn't even know. I didn't even know. I didn't even know what. So I kind of figured out unfulfilled d orbital, the energy difference. That's what takes the molecules out everywhere. So everywhere is unfulfilled d orbital. And in my plus 12, the best score of all my subjects, and I didn't do badly, was chemistry. If you ask me, that's my weakest subject.
mm,
Now go and judge me on my mark sheet. You'll push me towards chemistry. You ask me, that was a fluke.
mm.
Unfulfilled the orbital worked for me in that exam,
Crazy.
right?
Yeah.
So you have to look at it in totality. So what they tend to do is look at the US university admission process, right? Write essays, write this, write that. I'm sure that some people can game it, but generally what they try to do is to understand you in a totality.
Yeah.
In India, that totality is still not there. Maybe it's slowly coming, but still not there. Why are you not asking? What have you done? So when we were in the same institution as we were, because I said we'll keep it mystery. So I met this whole bunch of Bombay guys, right? Number 1 to 10 graduating class.
Mm, mm,
They were geniuses,
mm,
but they never studied.
mm,
One was playing to play hockey at 6 in the morning, then watching Kohli under 19 team playing cricket, etc. But then you also know a whole bunch of others who go to the same institution, who go to Kota, give up their life,
mm,
rote learn.
mm,
Those guys are not going to do anything great in their life. You are simply slogging it out. Not that slogging is bad, but there's a qualitative difference between the two.
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But some of these guys were slugging it out. They may be the best artists in the world that nobody ever got to know because their parents pushed them into this one area, or they felt under pressure from society to become a doctor or engineer, whatever. Like, so I asked this question to a couple of my relatives who are much, much younger in a current generation. And I said, why do you not want to be a newscaster in India now?
Mm,
Because
mm,
what is your driving motivation? Is it something that you enjoy and like, or is it money? Because if it is money and assurance of a job, a newscaster, and there's quite a few other professions that has opened up in India now, which are pretty lucrative and it gives a good run in terms of you may start with less, but it's not a dead end. Whereas, let's be honest, if you're a software engineer, which everyone is nowadays, you have a risk of not having a job in a few years' time if you're not very, very good. I can go to an AI tool and type, and it'll give me the full code. I'll try your website thing next week. That's in my to-do list.
mm, mm.
I don't need a web designer anymore. So, in the world ahead, those who are pursuing the things they really enjoy, as always in history, will do well and be more secure. Because it's better to be good at something esoteric, but you're really good at it,
Mm, mm.
compared to chasing the honeypot, which may be a shifting honeypot.
Yeah. So there's this very illuminating sort of video on YouTube called Competition is for Losers. It's by Peter Thiel. I highly recommend it again. It's basically excerpts or I don't know if he gave that lecture before or after 0 to 1.
Hmm.
I don't remember. But basically it's like pieces of or the framework of 0 to 1 that he puts in
Mm-hmm.
and says that, hey, I mean, it's actually a chapter in 0 to 1. So the whole idea behind his lecture is if you just identify an extremely niche thing that you are best at, and he talks about it in the concept in the context of products. So he says if you build a product which is extremely niche and yet satisfies an unmet need for a set of people, and if you are the best at doing that particular thing,
You'll be successful.
yeah, you'll be successful because it's like you don't have any competition. That's the first thing. The second thing is if you actually go after a very large market and end up building a product, you'll have to compete with everyone, including Google, because most likely if you look at it, Google has built a product or a platform that satisfies that. I mean, just in terms of software, if you look at trying to build software, actually yesterday, uh, in the context of the tools that we were talking about the other day, Google released a tool which is called Firebase Studio,
Right.
which which does exactly the same stuff that I talked to you about.
Mm-hmm.
So there's these two, Bolt and the other one. There's actually three. So Bolt, there's another one called Replit, or I think yeah, v0.dev, which is like a Replit owned
Mm-hmm.
by Replit. And there's the third one that I recommended to you. So all of these three are doing the same sort of one, not one prompt, but multi-shot prompt platform development sort of software. And it's only going to get much better because they're going to agentify it, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a lot of stuff that happens there. And then Google went ahead and built something called Firebase Studio. So they've had this thing called Firebase for a very long time, where you can basically build an app inside GCP
Mm-hmm.
and deploy it inside GCP and security inside GCP. You don't have to go outside
Anything,
GCP.
yeah, yeah. It's similar. It's similar to their Vortex AI, right? So I did
Yeah,
that thing, right?
Vertex basically it
And what they were claiming was it's an enterprise class platform, Vortex. It has got everything. You just do the APIs and everything, and you got everything sorted.
So Vertex is like on the same sort of platform or same play as Azure AI Foundry.
Mm-hmm.
And AWS also has something very similar. I don't.
Something rock. I can't remember the names.
So all of these guys have all of these similar, very highly similar competing products. But anyway, going back to my original point and your point, which is that you are better off being an extremely unique, especially in
Yes.
this, being an extremely unique Shokunin at one particular trade and hoping to be discovered by people and basically be market.
Doesn't it remind you of the book by the INSEAD and the BCG guy, which is the blue ocean theory? That there's the red ocean and the blue ocean. And you are better off in the blue ocean where the sharks are not there and fighting each other out because that's where the competition lies. And in their case, it's about companies and corporations. Then you
Yeah,
are better off looking for the blue ocean where there is no. So you are the one who go in, capture it, establish the market, and over time it will become red ocean because if you're doing well, pure
other people.
economics, right?
Are-
Supernormal profits, people will come and try to take part of the profit, right? So
Yeah,
you have to
yeah.
constantly, as a corporation, look for the blue ocean. Where is the next blue ocean?
Yeah, which brings us back to our business idea, which shall remain nameless, unnamed, and
Yes,
anonymous.
absolutely, yes.
For sake of keeping it a blue
because,
ocean.
because right now it hasn't got a name.
Yeah. So yeah, that brings us up to the 1 hour 3 minute mark.
Nice. Yeah. I think if you were
Successfully.
to publish, no, but so I think we should end it in a way that you can actually cut it off and
Yeah,
make
yeah,
it
yeah.
a
No,
whole.
I
But
think
this
I think
part you have
that
to
was,
cut it off.
I
Yeah.
think that's
So
a decent wrap up, right? That
yeah,
find find something that you think you can get good at. Uh, it should also align with who you think you are as a person, and ideally, it's also something that people will pay you for.
absolutely.
Even more ideally, it's something
Yeah.
that not a lot of people are operating in.
So what is true for blue ocean in a corporate context is true for individual level as well. Find
Exactly.
your own blue ocean, which is unique, which is something that you really care about, so that
Yeah.
you can put your effort. And
Yeah.
then chance probability of you being successful in that one is much higher compared to the opposite of it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Humanify yourself even more. I would add to that
Absolutely.
more like make yourself more human and make yourself a one-off kind of occurrence because you want to obviously also battle the whole AI skill flattening that's going to
Yes.
happen.
And in the broadest of spectrum, and it's a generic view I have, you should always reflect because reflection is the only way to actually come up with certain questions which are critical and then come up with answers which may not be one shot and it may change over time in your own
Mm,
lifetime, depending on where you are in life, what is your situation and context. Not enough people, in my opinion, do that, but those who will do that, they will find that they'll be much more clearer about themselves and then they can do what you just suggested, right? Find that sweet spot of yours that actually makes you tick.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, without reflecting, you would not get to this first of all, right?
Absolutely.
You might, and it might not be very quick. It might take a very long time for you to figure that out.
Oh, absolutely. It's not a time bound thing. You cannot say I'm starting on Thursday and I'll finish on Saturday
Yeah, you
because
can't.
if you're lucky, you might be. But
Yeah,
it's actually a constant way of living life in a way. There is no start point, there's no end point, but there is this, I would say it's a mindset where you are, when I say constant, what I mean is on a continuous basis, you are always reflecting back and saying, for all aspects of your life. If you try to do it artificially, you can do it for some time, but it'll be very much engineered in that case, right? But it has to be much more organic, not
yeah,
engineered.
yeah. I mean, we can only talk about frameworks, right? Like we cannot specify exact verticals, industries, areas that a person should go into.
Absolutely.
We haven't probably even started to see the uniqueness that comes out because I think there'll be like an explosion of like what's called Cambrian explosion, right? Of unique one-off sort of companies, like one-person companies or extremely micro-sized companies that goes along because um, as the skill flattening, the great skill flattening happens, people will be eventually pushed into finding things that they can uniquely sell on the global marketplace, and they will eventually end up having to be that one person. And then there's 4.1 billion of us. So it's going to go like up. It's going
Absolutely.
to be deeper than a
And
hockey stick.
and I think and the other thing as a skill flattening is one part, the other thing is skill shifting, right? You will need different set of skills, which are more and more. If you take AI being the most popular topic and acronym for everyone,
Mm,
if you look at it, how to write a question becomes very important. It's a very
mm.
subjective thing,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
So
I
it's not
had a
about rote
point.
learning.
Yeah, yeah. It's not about rote. It's about asking the critical thinking part that you were talking about
Absolutely,
earlier. But
absolutely.
there's a double click on that I just realized yesterday while I was thinking about it. Of course, prompting is important, but also how cheaply can you get it done, right? So it's
Yeah,
all about compute and the cost of
absolutely.
asking a question has gone up, or it's going to change. It's going to get cheaper, obviously, and it's probably going to be free eventually, but it's all about getting to the right question as soon as possible, right?
Exactly. So I was not trying to go too much into the AI part of this GPUs and TPUs and how expensive they are. What I meant was one of the key skill then becomes how to frame a question.
Mm,
Now, to frame a question, actually, you need to know a lot of things. And
yeah.
those who are able to actually do that, focus it, they will be better at it. Whether it's cheaper or more expensive doesn't matter. It's a slightly different part. But what I mean is the shift in the skill that you need to be successful or to get
Mm,
most out of it. It's actually has been there. I mean, Google search was always all about how you frame the question.
mm,
It's
mm.
the same thing,
Cool. Okay.
right?
Note, I
That was
think.
good.
Yeah.
Edit, edit it and publish it and see how many people throw shoes at us.